Good morning. Hey, good morning, ladies, good morning, gentlemen. This is how I got a 90, 89.2 accuracy, average loss of 15 to 21% estimate. Not mass estimate. So I can scoot over and get all my major pieces like this to defend and try to trade off everything. So Queenside Castle, I make my decision. My opponent should be going for a pawn storm. I'm going to be going for a pawn storm soon. And then Queen C1, clearly not understanding the concept of what they should do. Good morning. Hey, good morning, ladies, good morning, gentlemen. This is how I got a 90, 89.2 accuracy, average loss of 15 to 21% estimate. Top mass estimate is 62%. And to simply say, and my depth ability was high. This is also going to be a reference on then how anti-cheating, how servers detect engines. So we're going to talk about mini-game evaluation scripts, middle game evaluation, like a script of how to look and how to evaluate a middle game, tactical holes, symbolic middle game plans, how to apply the backwards method, create a plan, and also understanding the pawn structures, fixed or closed, open and fluids, and then wing heavy. Also how to apply evaluation. Apply evaluations and analyze it in your game while playing your own game, and also asking yourself the terminal question, and also from positioning to attack. So I play as close to Sicilian defense. And my opponent goes e4. I go c5, Sicilian defense. d3. It goes knight to c6, going for the close Sicilian. Close Sicilian defense point on attack. Then I just transfers into a French-like variation of close Sicilian defense. Bishop f4. Bishop b6. Knight to b5, going for a sort of finally revert attack, trying to forward my king and rook, and potentially use my queen in the process. And I feel the pressure and the accuracy of this position. I take my time and really ask myself, how am I going to defend this? Because one of the hardest things about the Sicilian is playing sharp. You have to play very high accuracy and not make mistakes, like potentially losing to this fork and losing your queen and your rook, and then just immediately losing. So this is why I took my time to really evaluate now. This pawn chain, what does this tell me? Bad bishop, undeveloped knight, queen, all the pawn chain plus, and also what is my opponent's plan? To probably go on the queen side and fight on the queen side. So I'm gonna try to castle opposite and attack this way in the long term, and seeing that this bishop is useless, I want to trade off this bishop if I can. And that's just practical I'm thinking. In this evaluation, I'm gonna take a guess that I am slightly better. Let's see, slightly better. Here. Come on. Let me guess. Doesn't even give me an answer. Okay, so I think it's just dead equal. Oh yeah, I had a feeling I was white was slightly better, or I was like just a little bit slightly worse. Yeah, I saw this fork here too, but I didn't see it as necessary. I missed it completely. So I just want to actually go e5. Not going for straight tactics right away and taking out my queen early, playing more fundamental, counter-striking the bishop, knight defends. Now this knight is just outplaced. Bishop scoots back, and then go bishop g7, going for the basically for the close Sicilian defense, but putting my bishop as a the Dragon Hyperdrive in variation too. So I'm putting multiple concepts of creating the Maroxy bind, potentially the Nine Earth defense, the French pawn structure system, and transposing it, putting the bishop on the fianchetto, and casting queenside, potentially getting this queen active over here, and these rooks to slide over. And I'm basically putting all these opening concepts in the Sicilian defense together and putting all these transpositions as one. So usually the best move in this position is to very simply, I think here for black it should be right. Here for white it should be just like the check here and the sacrifice material. I believe, right? No, not there. Wrong with what? Yeah, it's just confused. I don't even understand what the. Yeah, it's just it's mine. And then I go defix, creating the Moxie bind. Okay, now we're gonna talk about. We're gonna go and get started. Let's go about phase 1. The inaugural scan. Pawn color the structures. Before looking at pieces, look at the skeleton. I identify the pawn color. Light squares or dark squares? What were my opponent's pawn? Light squares. What are the hollow complex weakness? Take a guess. If you have been watching my videos and actually paying attention, dark squares. What is the dead bishop in this position? Because my opponent's pawn are on what color? Light squares. Then what is the tall pawn in the position? Let's take a guess. You only have a 50-50% chance. The opponent's light square bishop is the tall bishop, and your light square bishop is way more relative value there. So their goal is to trade off that light square bishop or use it as defensive anchor. Number 3 is complex depletion. The opposite colors are now my roots, and those are the squares my pawns no longer can guard. So either minor pieces and major pieces have to put pressure on. Also, distraction warning. Is a minor piece move of mine close to any file from a rook needed for a queenside swing? If a pawn move blocks my most active piece, it's a structural error. Phase 2. Tactical hold expectation. Now I'm locating the destination for my reposition plan. Number 1. Find your outpost, find the pivot point, and find the focus zone. Is it a queenside or kingside in one move? And what square acts as a hinge for the board? And where does the square deepen the enemy territory that cannot be attacked by a pawn? Example, f4, d4, or d5 squares. And the fight zone. What squares are we fighting for? Usually this is the break square where pawn trade would open up the board, and then apply a simplified middle game plan. Apply the backwards method to create a plan. As we're going to continue, d6, bishop b2. Now we have the tall pawn bishop. I am slightly better. White is slightly worse. This is a micro advantage I should be able to grind out. Almost. a6 doing the knight off Sicilian defense type move. Knight scoots back. Bishop b6, taking a beautiful diagonal for my bishop, making my bishop more active, and simply fighting for the light squares because the bishop on e2 is not. Castles, knight to g7, repositioning, slowly repositioning. Bishop attacks knight, and then I go f6, simply, oh, you want to attack my knight and pin queen? I'm going to shut that down and put my pawn on all dark squares and support the Moxie bind. Pawn a4, queen c7. Simply queen c7, always a standard move in Sicilian to defend the Moxie bind pawn chain, to defend the b7 pawn, and to get access to the dark square complex diagonals, potentially put pressure on the knight in the future, or put pressure on the a4 pawn, just as overall what the purpose is. Pawn b3, queenside castles. Now my intention is clear. I have a clear advantage I should be able to convert. What did my opponent do? He made a bunch of commitments with his pawn structure, and this is the key target. Let's say if we were going to get into endgame, I want to target this pawn with all I can. That's my goal. If I wasn't able to get through my attack or was forced to go into an endgame, this pawn and this bishop, garbage. And this queen also pretty passive too. What white should be doing is pawns trying to pawn storm my king and go for an attack to get a hook on one of these pawns and swing all their pieces over to the king side. I'm trying to go to the queen side. And also, even this very important c2 7 square, that if I ever do get attacked very viciously, I can scoot over and get all my major pieces like this to defend and try to trade off everything. So queenside castle, I make my decision. My opponent should be going for a pawn storm. I'm going to be going for a pawn storm soon. And then queen c1, clearly not understanding the concept of what they should do. I go g5, booting out the bishop. Bishop, I don't even understand. My opponent just decided to get a minor piece. Takes, queen takes, and then rook to g1, rook g1, rook g1. Make a move that makes sense this game. It doesn't. It actually makes sense this game. And it's not. And also, if you actually know, it's b1, not g1. Alright, I digress. Alright, number 1, target selection. Where's my king's weakest defender? Identify a potentially overloaded piece. To attack the weakness, my knight needs to be on x square x. How many moves does it take to reposition the square? My rook is on square doing nothing. I will initiate queenside, taking the move toward the fight zone. Powerful after scan checks. If I move this piece, what is my opponent's most warning response? Stop their plan before completing mine. Okay, summary table. If the pawn has your fixing closed, your bishop becomes more or less valuable pieces, potentially dead. The holes in front of the pawns too. That's what you fight for. The holes and the squares in front of your pawn. The holes in front of your pawns. Open and fluid, your king side becomes closed too quickly. The center, d4, d5, e4, e5. And wing heavy, your center might collapse. The breaks where pawns can trade. So controlling pawn breaks. Now to its illusion, the evaluation script effectiveness, we have to simply apply key phases to this game. We have to build fundamental concepts introduced earlier, such as testing pawn structures, adding strategic squares, developing code repeats plan, activity, and we can trace how each print will manifest in my decision making, resulting in dynamics of play. I am black, I fix my pawns all on dark squares because my opponent put all their pawns on light squares. I need to fight for the f4 square in the g file. My plan to reposition my knight to f4 is use the queenside saying to pressure b2, forcing white to defend what is distracted, defend with a lethal blow on g2. Every 3 move I ask if my pawn structure a shield for me or a cage for my own pieces. If it's a cage, your next plan should be a pawn break to open lines. If it's a shield, you should plan to reposition behind it until it feels the right to strike. The moment is right to strike. No feeling, but knowing when the moment is. Now transition from position to attack. The biggest mistake players can make is attacking too early. You must reach critical mass first. The one more piece rule before you launch a final strike. Identify all your pieces that have maximal potential in your game. I didn't strike until the knight reached f4 and the rooks were doubled and one piece is sleeping, the attack might stall. A positional attack works best when you fix a weakness. You use your pawns to prevent the enemy from moving your defenders. By keeping the center closed, you fix white king in a corner, and a powerful attacks. While you are attacking, ask my opponent would if I were my opponent, how would I escape? If they have a breakout move, use one positional step move to stop it before you carry on the attack. This makes the attack terminal. How to play close positions, like my Sicilian structure in close Sicilian game. The biologic change from speed to maneuvering. Knight dominance in close games, outposts are advanced squares where such that a knight can be placed without being easily dislodged by pawns. Often making knights particularly valuable in those situations. Outpost chess turns. Reference. Rook day to g8. Queen g3, not rook g1, rook g8, wow, that's embarrassing. Bishop f6, defending the pawn chain, defending the knight, defending the e5 pawn, discover attacking queen, queen has to trade off and sacrifice the exchange, and then it's just activity on the e file. On the g file, knight to b1, I don't even understand, queen to g8, simply try to stack up on the g file, c3, queen f8, b4, knight to g6, about to reroute, push, sacrifice the knight to go for the initiative. King scoots out the way. Knight to b8, defending the critical move of a6, pawn a6, so this rook doesn't get counterplay on this side of the file, and my king safety doesn't get jeopardized. Very important move. g3, knight takes, g2, minor piece attack, bishop takes a2, knight a3, bishop scoots back, queen takes a6, knight takes a6, knight to b5, good outpost. And also the hook. Look for a pawn that is moved. That pawn is moved to create a hook or a hole behind it. Navigate your knight towards that hole. Let us pause. Call to action. If you have the attention span to listen to this video, to understand the concepts in it, and have the discipline and the understanding to be here, thank you. It means sincerely a lot. Very simple, very sweet to the point. Make sure you cap the backwards method course. $500. Great return online vendors. How to play consistent, dominant chess, positional chess, and the taxes will come. And how to play endgames at an absolutely specialist and abnormal level. And how to simply so many different subjects. It's a great ROI investment. You have the Endgame Blueprint series, the 10-0, freaking Blueprint series on the playlist. Check that out. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share this with somebody. Check the website sdcforged.org. And get if you're interested in religion and logic and science and biology and freaking psychology and all those subjects intertwined into a book. Make sure to get the analysis of the forensic truth on the Stripe link. There's both pages in the description. One for the backwards method course, one for one for the actual freaking book that was written, the truth analysis. And very simply, also too, make sure to click the calendar link in the description too if you're interested in getting a 5-game review. And that's all. Let us continue. And thank you guys. I will see you on the other side. I believe in that. Also, outposts with pawns and also pawn drakes. A pawn which is a closed position will stay closed until someone initiates a break. Do not make a pawn break until your pieces are perfectly repositioned. In your game, I kept the center closed for white's bishop dead, and I only opened the game on the g file once my rooks were ready to exploit it. Lateral vulnerability. In closed positions, you cannot attack through the center, and you must attack laterally through the flanks. Use their second, third ranks to swing your rooks onto one wing to the other. Since the center is a wall, the wings are the only open doors. Squeeze versus strike. Squeeze, positional, minimize your opponent's options. Strike, the attacking, maximum force on one square. Pace, slow repositioning moves. Strike, fast forcing moves, check sacrifices, clearance sacrifices, tactics. Keep it fixed or closed, break it to open lines. 10 to 1 moves, 10 to 31 repositioning, 10 to 33 is the axis clearance sacrifice. And if identifying that bishop, maneuver your hero knight, the slow pressure, and the final break. Number 1, my opponent's critical mistake is that I play with activity but not with purpose. Here's the autopsy. The hollow attack. White, illustrated by white. Knight to b5 and bishop takes g5. Rather than reinforcing the underlying structure, white focus on attacking individual squares. For example, my response with e5, we might b5. On b5, no longer effective retreat squares, thus becomes hopeless. Later on, move 15, bishop takes g5. White sacrificed the bishop on g5 was an impulsive decision. Likely making response, mounting in positional pressure. However, the sacrifice did not lead to tactical gains or compensation, as White's pieces were not sufficiently coordinated to capitalize on these opening lines or weaknesses, illustrating the importance of piece coordination and placement. Where poorly coordinated pieces fail to work into a unified objective. Piece coordination in chess is how your pieces work together. Bishop g3. White allowed their bishop to be trapped behind the e5 and d6 pawn. However, the player fought to prevent the e5 break, and tender immediately give the bishop luft or air. Knight should have been focused and worried about my attacking my king side and going for a dogfight. White was worried about my queen side, but I was moving my knight to f4. They missed a terminal threat because they were looking at pawns and not looking for a counterattack. In close game, time is a resource, but sphere quality is the currency. Don't do something just to do it. In open games, you must be fast. In closed games, if you don't have a good plan, just move through your worst pieces by one square. The knight-bishop hierarchy. In closed games, a knight is like a king. In open games, a bishop is like a queen. Since you kept the center closed, the knight on f4 is the strongest piece on the board. Rubber fan effect. Pressure in close positions can build similarity to stretching a leather band, increasing until the opponent is compelled to make a concussion or a desperate sacrifice, which in practice may occur in structure even locked, as demonstrated by hammer targeting weaknesses securing victory in close inside game. Position evaluation for every level. You guys are going to read this over because my voice is tired. Who has more pieces? One pawn means that you're winning, even if your king is getting made a mistake. You evaluate on potential puncher. Advanced less expert. Pawn skeleton. What is the biologics of the pawns? At December, you must evaluate the position based on the end game. If all my pieces are traded right now, what does my pawn structure? Does my pawn structure win? 2200 plus. Grandmaster master. Pathologic exceptions. What is my opponent's only way to stay in the game? My opponent's only way in the game was to get a kingside attack and get a pawn storm on my king, and to try to destroy its relative value and safety. I had the important c7 square to escape if all my pieces if all white's pieces were to paramount and come after my king. Summary table, close position, cheat sheet terminology. Pawn drakes, f5, d4, d5 pushes. Only way to open the cage. Outposts, squares not being guarded by your pawns but not theirs. This becomes lethal. Warrior Knight becomes lethal. Bad Bishop. Bishop block its own pawn. Trade your bad bishop for their good one. New ring. Moving a piece 3 to 4 times to a better square. Speed doesn't matter, destination does. You already dominate evaluation squares, characteristics of medium and advanced player, estimately. This is just summary. Also try to identify the worst piece more. You have to move beyond the master in the basics of fixed center logic. Uncommon strategy evaluation to help you design your biological approach and your structural integrity and your terminal outposts and your subtle swing to a momentum. This is going to be a selection of blueprints of draws of analytical reasoning that distinguish expert level play and master level play in close positions. Each blueprint will the original contract fragments of the Ghost Knight representing lateral latent tactical potential or tall pawn shield, or how the seam, and passive bishop can become a structural anchor that moves customary strategy. These pyrograms will employ vivid analogies, casting pieces that dynamic agents, hero knight, rubber band effect, whose effectiveness emerge not only from fixed attributes but also their situation versatility. With a lock pawn structure, collectively, these blueprints will exemplify and innovate methodology approaches, encouraging the player or you to reconcile stagnant positions through the lens of potential energy hooks and terminal outposts. By featuring these creative patterns and analogies, this list will provide advanced toolkits using theoretical insight and practical application in complex close positions. The Ghost Knight. You can read that over for yourself. Maneuver a knight to a square. Have no pawn on it. The tall pawn shield. Keep your bad bishop inside a pawn chain, specifically to have a terminal weakness, freeing your king and rooks to attack. Outpost exchange. Personally train your good bishop for your opponent's knight. That is eyeing a hole in your square. Knight rerouting. F1, D2, B3, A5. Using the very back rank to move a knight to the opposite wing without blocking your queen. Bishop fianchetto check. Moving your bishop to fianchetto to g7 to h6 to trade off a key defender on the dark squares. That's the phantom breaks, setting up pawn breaks like f5, but actually never taking them. The threat of the break keeps your opponent pieces paralyzed. Squeezes. Pawn curves creation. Allowing your pawn to be attacked so you can move it and creating a hook for your rook to lift over. Central clan. Advancing your pawn e5 or d5, specifically to take away the opponent's naturally developed squares of an enemy knight. f6 or c6. Asymmetric wall, having pawn on one color in the center and the opposite color on the wing to confuse the enemy's bishop's utility. The quiet majority, known as a pawn majority on the queenside ability, hidden structural advantage on the king side. Queenside swing, lateral pressure, rook lift, queen anchor, paraphylaxis, rook doubling, b5 distraction, lateral defense. You can read this over. Positional surgical sacrifices, structurally insane, giving a rook for a knight, specifically to destroy the opponent's only piece, capable of jumping over the closed center. Pawn gives, sacrificing a pawn to fix the opponent's pawn structure in a permanent cage. The blockade, sacrificing material to place a piece on a square where it cannot be moved, stopping the enemy opponent's entire army. King walk, the entirely closed king, moving your king to a safer ring, b8 or g8, manually without castling, or to c7. Declaring sacrifice, sacrificing a magic piece to open a single diagonal for your den bishop to become lethal. Evaluation and turn method, zero move evaluation. If you stop moving, your opponent has no productive move. Your position is +5 regardless of what the engine says. The whole count. Evaluate bis on who has more unguardable squares in the opponent's half. Mobility differential. Count the total squares your pieces can reach for stairs. Close game, space equal victory. Trade down. Evaluation. If we trade every piece down by kings, who pawn structure wins the race? Temple store. Close game, losing temple, playing a slower move, often beneficial, and force the opponents to weaken the structure. When you see a close position, use this legal sense check. Metric 1, 2, 3, 4. Hero knight square, an outpost that cannot be touched. Pawn hook that I can use to swing my rooks. Is my worst piece currently blocking a better piece? Can I win this game by only moving my king and knights? Final tips. Most players miss metric 25. They rush by playing slower. They rush by playing slower and repositioning as I play with the queenside thing. I'm showing potential energy when the snap happened. This kind results in 100% accuracy as analogy for finish line executed. Master also the principle of the least active piece, PLAP. In a close game, your army is only strongest, most useless member. Least active ruling. Men and Grandmasters don't look for great moves, they look for bad pieces, and no piece of capability, can't move, or no utility, or isn't defending anything is turn will drain on your position. Scan every 3 to 5 moves. Scan your back rank, find pieces that have been moved or been buying out its own pawns. Use the backwards method. Don't ask for people to go, ask where it must be delivered. Deliver a lethal blow. This is rooting. Sometimes a beast must go backwards and forward. Then play knight f3, knight e1, knight c2, knight b4, knight e6 examples. Rounding blueprints. A home run knight, lift and swing, and the deep bishop maneuver. Retreating the bishop to the very first wing, bishop b1 or bishop g1 to protect the king and clear a diagonal for queen and rooks. How to build a middle game plan. Access your personnel. You guys can read the rest because my voice is absolutely tired. Eject a terminal target, pick one target, and piece to destroy. Don't just attack. Say my objective, this pawn or this hole. Details, piece inventory. Examples, calculation, visualization. Send checks, path to Lapix. And you can read the rest. A hook pawn is also, in theory, meaning as an advanced pawn beyond the starting rank, allowing any pawn to strike it and force a file or diagonal to be open. Your opponent king is behind a wall f2, g2, and h2. It is a fortress. If they move to g3, it becomes a hook, because you can march your h pawn to h4 to trade off on h3. The fortress is gone. Now you have an open h file for your rooks and queen direct line to the king. In your game, I did the same thing. Rook e3 didn't create a pawn hook, but I moved rook takes g3 check, forcing treating the GC file as a contact post to force the position open. Paraphylaxis, overload piece, color complex, light or dark, 32 light, 32 dark, own the card complex, dark short bishop, forever home, outpost, pawn break. Read the definition and the theory and the logic, and I'll read all the bullet points. Intermediate moves are Zuchen switch. In between move, hook, hold, tom pawn initiative. When you study a truthful analysis, I want you to look at the hooks in the hole in history and biology. Chess is the same as a forensic examination of the board to find where the structure is truthfully weak. These are your references, and that's all. Hope you guys enjoyed. You're going to see the rest of this game. I sacrificed my rook to force checkmate. Thank you guys. Goodbye.